Alrighty, welcome everybody. I'm super excited for this one. Jason, welcome. Mic check real quick, just to make sure you're set.
Check, check, 1, 2.
Hey, good afternoon.
How we doing today, guys?
We're doing good. Excited to dive deep, learn more about GALA Games. And before we get started, Jason, do you want to give us a quick background of yourself, your career trajectory, and how you found yourself working in games and ultimately in Web3 gaming?
How much time do we have?
What's
on the schedule here?
Hey, listen, man, we got as much time as you need. I wanna take our time with this and go slow and get onto the nuts and bolts of things.
Sure. So, basically, long story short, my name is Jason Brink. A lot of people know me as Bitbender. I've been in crypto for a long time, over 10 years now, which feels like it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 years. It's been a while. I originally got into the blockchain space because I saw it as a way that I could have an impact in, solving social problems like, wealth distribution and in foreign aid situations and things like that. As a country, the United States and many other countries around the world send, billions of dollars to different other countries to help them out. And after doing some disaster relief work in Haiti and other places like that, you become very intimately aware that even though people are sending tons and tons of money to help people, very little of it is actually getting to the people. So I originally got into crypto because I saw, blockchain and transparency as a way to sort of fix some of those leaky foreign aid pipeline situations that you run into. In 2014, I won an award from the Global Development Network, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for a concept called the aid dollar, which is essentially working to put that idea into practice. That was cool, but working with NGOs and governments and things like that was really, really, really torturously slow. And I felt that there were better ways to do things, and so that kind of got tabled for a while. And then a couple years after that, I met Eric, and Eric Schiermeyer is the founder and CEO of GALA. He's one of the co-founders of Zynga. He's the former CTO of Intermix Media, which created MySpace. So he's been in the space for a really long time, from a sort of Web 2 and gaming perspective. And we were talking about ways that we could use gaming to make a difference and how inefficient it was for, if you're a mobile app developer, then you know this, but if you're not a mobile app developer, you see those ads in your phone for various games, and you click on those ads and you go and play that game. Those ads are horrendously expensive, and most of that money just goes to the platform. And we're like, well, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a way that we could give people ownership of their in-game assets so that if they paid money, they would actually get something, and to basically make it so that rather than just paying a platform, the users are able to get something as well. And this is kind of the idea, and it is from this that GALA was born. And I am, well, just some nuance here, but my technical title at GALA is Barbarian Path of the Berserker level 20. The title that I give everyone outside is President of Blockchain. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of who I am and what we're doing.
All right, cool. Let's go with Barbarian Path of the Berserker. I'm a big fan
It's
of
way,
that.
way cooler, right? Like, it's just way cooler.
Way cooler. And Jason, you and I spoke offline a bit. You're
Yeah.
obviously an avid gamer. I was an avid gamer for most of my life. I still don't have much time to play games anymore, but I still daydream about playing games.
It's just terrible, right? It's terrible. Like you get into something because it's a thing that you love and you're passionate about, and then you never get to do that thing ever again because other things are more important.
You got to
Terrible.
adult, but I think you found a good way of bringing that passion and adulthood together, and we're going to dive into that in just in just a moment. I've heard of other people working for the UN or working for the IMF or the World Bank and having similar
Hmm.
experiences to you. Oftentimes, they see the corruption happening at these organizations, and they don't realize, a lot of them don't realize that crypto protocols would solve a lot of the corruption and lack of
Oh, it's
transparency.
terrible. Well, I mean, but it's not even. It's not even. It's so. I'll tell you a story. So I went to lunch one day with a bunch of people who worked for an aid organization. I'm not going to name names here. Okay. Um, but it's one of those organizations that's quite well funded, and it receives money from governments. It receives money from individuals. It's one of those. And we spent the entire morning at an event at like a conference talking about these things and fixing these problems and solving the plights of these particular individuals that were the group that we were focusing on at the moment. And then they're like, okay, great, let's all go out to lunch. And so we all went out to lunch and we went to a extremely nice hotel. And everybody there had like, it was like a $6,000 bottle of wine and, really, really nice food. And there's nothing wrong with really, really nice food. Um, but then it was billed back to the organization from which they originated. And it's like, okay, that seems off. It seems like we could do better there. And so it's just one of those things. And yes, blockchain is designed to fix that.
Yep, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I've heard many of such stories. With that
Yeah,
said,
super
Jason,
common.
can you we well actually let me take a step back. As a gamer,
Sure.
what are some of the biggest problems in your opinion that centralized gaming companies currently face?
That centralized gaming companies face or that users of centralized gaming companies face? Those are two
That's
separate categories. Super
th-
important, though.
that's fair. You're right. I should have made that distinction. Users and even developers of
Okay.
centralized gaming
Okay.
companies, because oftentimes I feel like they sacrifice quality for profits.
Yes, very much so. And I mean, there is the need for revenue and profit is a thing that exists, right? Like you have a company, it has employees. They need to do things like eat food and not sleep behind Walmart. And so their money has to be made. And I think the difference here between sort of the Web 2 and the Web 3 perspective is in the Web 2 space, especially if you're a large one of these really large companies, you've got shareholders that you are answerable to, and you have to generate a certain amount of revenue to make sure that they get their pound of flesh at the end of the quarter or whatever. Um, and so that creates situations where it forces the company to put a lot of pressure on players. And there was a very interesting call I was on some time ago with a very large company. And again, I hate that I have to do this, but I'm not naming names because this would really cause problems. And we were basically discussing the merits of on-chain ownership, right? So if you buy something, and this is something that is central to our belief, if you buy something, that thing should be yours, right? If you pay for it, it's yours. You do what you want with it. And so we were discussing this and kind of pitching to this company, if you will, and their response was basically, "Oh my gosh, that sounds horrid. Like they get to, oh, you mean they own it forever and you can't sell it to them again?" Um, so if you create a new version of the game and you want to bring that over, then you can't just make them buy the same exact thing a second time. Um, and so it's just a big shift in sort of mindset between Web 2 and Web 3 in that regard. As a player, obviously, there's tremendous benefits to being able to actually own your own stuff. It allows you to come in, play, you can upgrade, build, make things better, and then if you want, you give it to a friend or you sell it or you do anything you want with it. It is your thing. And that's really central sort of to our ethos. Um, and then as a developer, going with going with this sort of Web3 direction is a fundamentally different space and feel than if you were to go sort of Web2 style. So it's a really fascinating set of differences and conflicting and sometimes aligned incentives in the Web3 space that are very different from Web2.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, we spoke about this offline. I played a lot of WoW when it first came out in
Mm-hmm.
04, 05, 06. And I draw this parallel all the time that if WoW had hypothetically been in a Web3 game with asset ownership, a lot of these items that people had accrued back then, if those were NFTs dated back to 05, 06 on the blockchain, Sulfur S
Oh
being one
yeah,
of them, for example, imagine how much that would go for on an NFT marketplace. And it could be an NFT marketplace that was built by Blizzard that charges a fee. And so if an item sells
sure.
for $1 million, then the marketplace takes a 5% cut. Everyone wins, right? The person that wants to get rid of the item wins, the person that wants to have the item, own it for notoriety wins, and the house wins. And I think a lot of gaming studios maybe don't see this yet, or maybe they don't want to make that compromise. But even gamers that I go ahead, Jason.
Well, the other thing is if you're approaching this from a super centralized perspective, right? You know, if you are like an EA or you know any of those types of things, there is a tremendous amount of regulatory uncertainty in the space. And so you may, if you have shareholders that you are answerable to that are, you know, kind of old and a little bit more, and I mean this not at all in a political sense, but you know, more conservative in terms of their business risk appetite, which is why they're, you know, they own stock, not, you know, crypto. They are going to be less likely to be happy with you doing something that they perceive as risky because they don't necessarily understand it completely.
No doubt, and I also feel a lot of hear a lot of pushback from my friends that are traditional gamers saying, "Well, it brings in a pay to play mechanism, and that's not good, and people are going to be selling gold." It's like that already happens on a black market. It's just why don't make it
Yeah.
kosher and capture some of that value that already exists?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So
It's go ahead.
go ahead. No, sorry, you cut out there for a second.
No, 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 no. I was just gonna say that you know that market is a massive market. That's that fake like black market or gray market for in-game items on you know Web2 centralized games. Massive, massive.
So let's talk about Gala Games, high level overview, your mission, how you guys plan on solving some of these problems, if you see them as
Mhm.
problems, and then we can dive into the nuts and bolts of the ecosystem.
Sure. So, you know, for us, our high level mission as we look at it is we want to be a force for good and the leading force in Web3 entertainment across all verticals. And the question is, what does that mean? Right? We see entertainment, okay, as not being uh, divided. Okay, we see film and music and gaming as being inextricably intertwined with one another. And so basically by doing something that, you know, brings, you know, user ownership and ownership of your own experience to one of those markets, you enhance and increase things for everybody. You know, for example, you could have a game like Spider Tanks and a track by Snoop that goes in Spider Tanks inside the game, and whoever owns that track, you know, may be able to get something out of the fact that it is being played in the game. And whereas the gamers get to experience, you know, how cool it is to have a custom Spider Tank Snoop track play when you get a kill in your Snoop Tank. You know, we believe that all of these things should be brought together. Right now, what we see as the biggest challenge in the space by a very, very long shot is the concept of onboarding. How do we bring a Web2 user to Web3? Now, ultimately, with the end goal of having there be no more distinction between Web 2 and Web 3, and everything is just Web 3, and you have ownership of your in game assets because obviously you should. That's the end goal. But to get there, you know, we have all of these people, you know, we have 3.6 or something like that, 3.2 billion gamers globally. Okay. And we have, you know, a couple million wallets that are blockchain, based, that actually connect with Web3 games. Okay. That's a big difference. We have a lot of growing to do. And we see some pretty interesting things here. The first is that it is remarkably difficult to onboard a Web 2 PC game user. Okay, unless they're already in the blockchain space. If you're just a normal PC gamer or console gamer, you typically want nothing to do with blockchain. And if you read the news around PC gaming and things like that, then you probably have been fed a fairly steady diet of bullshit, to put it bluntly, from other organizations out there that talk about how terrible blockchain is. Now, so when we first started this, okay, when it was just Gala, we had one game at the time, Townstar, and we were looking at this going like, okay, how do we go from here? Because the app stores at that point in time were very hostile towards any sort of chain integration or NFTs, like whatsoever. So we focused at that point in time only on PC games. Now fast forward 3+ years, the app stores have loosened their stance a little bit. We have about 50 games currently in the pipeline. Okay, many of them, very seriously heavy duty, awesome AAA games. And we look at this and go, okay, well, what's the next step to bring these billions of users in? And that is obviously to expand our focus to include mobile. And the reason for this is pretty simple, because if we start off looking at this from the PC gamer perspective, very difficult to onboard, very difficult to convince that this is a thing, and extremely opinionated, very set in their ways, if you will. In fact, many PC gamers, myself included, and I will totally own this one, tend to not like mobile gaming. I prefer to, when I play a game, I'd like to have 3 screens, and I'd like to have a desk and a big gigantic clicky keyboard and all of these things, right? And the idea that I have to reduce all of that to a little tiny, phone that I hold in my gigantic sausage fingers, that gets super hot when I play anything that looks even remotely okay. That's something, it's not a thing I'm willing to do. But if you're a mobile gamer already, as most of the gamers in the world are, mobile gaming has growth year over year that is absolutely astounding. If you're a mobile gamer, you're already used to doing that, and you're already used to having what might be considered, from a PC gamer's perspective, a suboptimal experience. And so you're more willing to go ahead and try new things, like try a Web3 game, try something with blockchain integration, because you're already used to that as a basic concept. And it's only good for you, because now if you spend something in a game and you actually get something and you get to keep it, that's like a huge win, as opposed to all of the money that you dump into your existing Web 2 mobile games where you get absolutely nothing for them. And so, these are things that we're doing. And we also have some stuff that is maybe hopefully going to be released tomorrow, probably, that goes into the strategy in a little bit more depth, and shows some pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, that's the basic angle of the push, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I'm just like you, Jason. I've never really been able to get into mobile games. I'm a PC gamer. I like having multiple screens. I need my mouse with the extra buttons. I need to have full control, and I've always felt like a
Exactly.
lack of control with these with these mobile
Uh,
games.
yeah. I don't even do console gaming, man. I mean, like way back in the day, when the first Halo came out, I actually, and my buddy and I did this in his bedroom. He had a what was it? Not what was what platform was the first Halo on?
Xbox.
It was Xbox. It was an Xbox. That's what it was. And we actually got an adapter so that I could plug my keyboard into the damn thing.
Yeah, see, I
Because
started with console games, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, and then once I went PC gaming, it was hard to go back after having that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
control. And
yeah,
you're right
for
about
sure.
traditional, like a lot of gaming communities. I remember when Diablo Mobile was announced or something, the Diablo community just went insane. We don't want this. This is trash. Like no one's ever going to play this. But you're right. The majority of people on this planet that do play games aren't as serious, and they're playing it for fun. It's pass the time, and
Yeah, exactly.
much more people have access to phones than they do to PC games. It clicks. What are some goals that you guys have to bridge bridge the Web 2 and Web 3 world? Obviously, Web 3 games need to be a Web3 games need to be interfaceable in a way that looks like Web2. People don't need to be going through all the steps that we currently go through, setting up a wallet, confirming transactions. It just needs to be seamless. What are some plans you guys have?
Well, it needs to be seamless, and or it needs to be part of the experience that's built in further down the road. See, the problem is that when most people jump on and they play a Web3 game, the first thing that you get tasked with, okay, is this high friction, awful freaking wallet setup, journey. Okay. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Now, if you were able to play a game without that, and then later you get to the point where you actually have kind of a in gaming, there's the concept of the fatui, right? The first time user experience that teaches you how to play the game. And for like an old hardcore, PC gamer, fatui's always pissed me off because it's like, stop, get the blinky thing off my screen. I want to play and explore and do it my way, right? But they're very much a part of gaming these days. Having a crypto fatui built into a game that allows you to play up until a certain point, until you know, it's a game that you care about, and then walking you through some of those things. I think is an optimum way to do it. Now, of course, there's other like third party custodial solutions. One of the things that we're going to be doing over the next few quarters here is having social sign-ins. So you can sign into your Gala account with basically whatever other thing you want to sign in with, whatever makes you comfortable. Um, so it's these sorts of things where you remove as many of the barriers of entry or push them down to the point where it's less of an upfront ask. Okay, I mean, think of it this way: like if I'm wandering down the street and you walk up to me, let's say I'm in a grocery store parking lot and I have a pickup truck. Okay, you as a random stranger walks up to me and says, "Hey, dude, can you come help me take your truck and spend the afternoon and help me move my couch?" If I don't know you, there is zero chance I'm going to go do that. Like none, right? But if you and I are close buddies and we've hung out, every weekend for the last year and you have to move and I have a truck and you ask for my help, I'm more than willing to do that. Happy to, in fact. And so the problem is that in blockchain gaming, there's so little of that, sort of rewarding experience happens up front, while there is so much of the ask that happens up front, which is, the problem with pre-sales and with, getting NFTs, and you have to have a wallet to play. And like all of these things are high friction. We need to remove it or push it all back to the point where people will be willing to go through it, um, in order to have a better gaming experience while still being able to have a great gaming experience, even if they never want to engage with blockchain at all.
Yeah, and I mean that model makes perfect sense, and I also think it'll resonate more as Gen Zs and Gen Alphas get older and they
Yeah.
become the majority of the population, right? Just with any new technology, it'll be easier to embrace. I wanted to talk a bit about the different games that you guys have. I mean, Townstar, which is similar to Farmville. I know that you guys have Spider Tanks. You guys have Legacy, which is similar to The Sims. You guys have Last Expedition, which is FPS, similar to Dead Space. You guys have Echoes of Empire, similar to StarCraft, Fortified TD game, and then Mirandus, which is an RPG. Just to name a few,
Mm-hmm.
how many developer? I mean, you guys have even more in your portfolio on the way. How many developers you guys have working on these games, and also how many like
So,
in the greater Gala ecosystem? How many developers you guys have building?
yeah, so we have about 450 people internally to Gala. We have 4 game studios that are inside Gala, and we're working on Last Expedition, Walking Dead Empires, which we're doing in partnership with AMC, Townstar, and Mirandus are our 4 internal titles. Every other title that we have is being built outside with external developers who have partnered with us for the purposes of delivering this. Superior, for example, which is a roguelike. Roguelike, I highly recommend everyone check out. It's on Steam if you don't even want to get into the blockchain side of it. Super fun game that's built by Drifter. We've got stuff. Oh, man, I have to make sure I'm not saying stuff I'm not allowed to say. Mm. We have a lot of different companies that we're working with on a lot of different games. If you were to add up all of the developers in the ecosystem working on various projects, it's probably up in the 2,500 range.
Wow. Okay. And Mirandus is one that I am intrigued by. I heard it's similar to
Yes.
RuneScape, and you guys are in partnership. You guys are in a partnership with Polygon working on that. Can you give us some more insight into Mirandus?
Um, Mirandus is it's an MMORPG. It's being built by Michael McCarthy and his team. We are not actually in partnership with any specific organization to build the game. It's being built internally. We have announced that assets will be bridgeable to various other chains, which is probably where that confusion comes from.
Got
Um,
it.
but it's pretty epic. I would not look at it as RuneScape. I would look at it more as EverQuest. If there are those of you who are old enough to remember EverQuest, it's an MMORPG, and the concept of living in a dangerous world is pretty important. Like at nighttime, it's scary because it gets dark. Um, and the night is dark and full of terrors, as it were. But very, very, very cool game. The way that they're building it is very unique. We have another playtest coming up here before too terribly long, where people will be able to jump in and do a lot more than they have in previous playtests. And each time we advance this, much like sort of the world of EverQuest back in the day, the idea is for everyone to exist in a simultaneous server and in a persistent world. To be completely honest, it's almost a Neil Stephenson metaverse concept in terms of persistence, with a sort of medieval layer added to it, filter on it, if you will. But that's a super super interesting game, and the stuff that they're doing is just gorgeous. It's got an art style which I feel is not something that people use too much, and it's in that it is deliberately somewhat low poly. The reason for that is that even the most like photorealistic games that you run into, right, never look right. Like they just never look right. There's always that uncanny valley sort of situation, right? Where the eyes are doing something weird, or the eyebrow wrangler didn't show up for work when they were doing one particular scene or something like that. And so the specific the way that they're developing Mirandus is by using this lower poly art style, they're able to produce tons more content much more quickly, and still have this beautiful, beautiful world. So I highly recommend you guys to go to at Mirandus game on Twitter and take a look at some of what they've got posted there. Super cool.
I don't want to sidetrack the space too much, but I'm over here geeking out. I love MMORPGs; they're my favorite genre, and the fact that you guys are drawing inspiration from EverQuest. I remember when WoW came out, a lot of people that played EverQuest thought that WoW Classic, now it's known, is it was a very like easy mode type of MMO, and I feel like
Yeah, very
MMOs,
much so.
yeah, I feel like MMOs in general have gotten just like more and more user friendly, and the grind and kind of what makes the journey worthwhile has been maybe unintentionally flushed out. And so
Mhm.
I think it's cool. Do you think that they're going to kind of bring back that old school MMO feel where you need to spend a lot of time in the game and actually it's a bit grueling, right? It's a bit you have to put in the time to get the reward.
There definitely will be that. But the difference here that I would look at is, I think, the scope and sort of the epic sense of it. You know, World of Warcraft, and I was in I think it was one of the late alphas or early betas. Originally, love World of Warcraft. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a criticism. It's just a very different experience than EverQuest, which is like, shit. Here I am in this crazy open world. What am I going to do? And so that's kind of what the feeling that we did want to bring back. Now, the interesting thing about this is that a large part of the grind in EverQuest was due to the fact that you kind of had to do everything yourself, right? In this, you have the ability to access other player characters, and build out, whole economies within the game. So if you want to focus on your, whatever skill, you have a whole bunch of other people who are out there, trying to do that at a lower level and allowing you to, building the materials that you need to kind of push yourself up higher. So it's a little bit of a happy medium between the two, I think.
Yeah, you're bringing in that communal aspect, which I think a lot of
Yeah.
people love about MMOs as well. And I do see here that a few of the elf, the halfling have been sold out. You guys are still selling the orc, the dwarves, and the humans. Not a shill, not a financial advice, but just something that I'm looking here at the website, and I would love to bring Brandis on sometime for a space. Be fun to do a deep dive.
Oh my God. Michael McCarthy is one of the most fascinating people that I think I have ever met. And he is I could sit here and listen to that dude talk all day long. He has just the best freaking radio voice, and when he tells a story, it has a lot. He's a wonderful storyteller. He's got tons of emotion and tons of. He's just fantastic, and the world that he's building is a reflection of that. And it's not just
Well,
him, by the way. It's not just like one dude building that. I want to say that the team has 50 something people on it right now, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I would hope so. It's quite the heavy lift building a successful MMO, and many have tried.
Yeah.
Few have
Yes.
succeeded. So to take a step out of the tangent we just went on, although it does pertain to the greater GALA Games ecosystem, I wanted to talk a bit about kind of the fundamentals. I know that NFTs and tokens, last I checked,
Mhm.
were on Ethereum and will
Yeah.
eventually exist on the GALA sidechain. Can you explain?
Not sidechain. We actually have our own
Oh,
L1.
okay. Wow. Okay. So I
Yeah.
did not know that.
No, most
And
most people don't. Most people think that we're just like some, crap ETH project, or that we're gonna spin up some shitty L2. Um, because that seems to be the popular thing these days. Couple couple things to note before I dig into this, and allow me to take a deep breath and another drink of coffee before I get started. But the the basic the basic reality that we're dealing with is that if you look at gaming, okay, real gaming, not blockchain gaming, okay, not like, you know crappy DeFi with stickers attached to it, yield farm gaming, like real gaming with a real user base, okay, one mobile game, just one decent mobile game, has orders of magnitude more users than all blockchain gamers combined. That's a hugely important fact. And if you have some of these projects that are out there, and I'm not going to, throw people under buses or name names or anything like that, but, you know, I've seen just about every single L2 pretty much brought to its knees by one game with a decent number of users all trying to do a thing at the same time. Yes, horizontal scaling, yes, roll ups, yes, all of these things, but still, even when that happens, these L2s get bogged down pretty badly. And that's with the tiny number of users that we have right now. And let's not even talk about Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum was broken by CryptoKitties like half a decade ago. And so that's a whole different situation. But anyway, to my larger point, we need a different type of blockchain to actually allow gaming to happen. What happens if you have 100 million users playing a super popular game on a daily basis, each of those initiating, you know, dozens or hundreds of transactions over the course of a day? That requires just a different way of thinking about it that I don't think many in the space are digging into right now. And so this is where the creation of our own L1 came into this. We needed to build something that would specifically work for gaming, that would not get us stuck behind someone else's developmental bottleneck. So for example, a lot of these projects and things like that use like rollups, right? You're depending on another code repo that somebody else is maintaining to allow your own project to actually work. And if something happens on on that side of things, or there's updates stopped getting pushed, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. You end up depending on that to continue building. Now, this gets even worse if you start looking at, like, you want to build on Ethereum, right? Or you want to build on an L2. Now, everything that you do is completely dependent on them not changing their plans, and even if you're part of a broader decentralized ecosystem, you never know what they're going to do. And so that, from a business perspective, is kind of an unacceptable risk, on top of the fact that scaling to handle the correct numbers of users is very difficult. And so this is where we came down to the creation of our own L1. And we're getting ready to release, and again, this was supposed to have happened a couple days ago, but a bunch more information on exactly how all of that works. But it is live right now. It uses GALA for gas. It is what Spider Tanks currently runs on. It is project name Jiri. But that's not going to be the final name. There's a whole new brand and everything that's going to be released here before too terribly long that is the real name for it. But yeah, that's kind of the direction that we've gone with that, and it's, so far, I'm extremely happy with it.
Wow. Okay. So, as is what much of you find on the internet, as it's outdated, I feel like a lot of my research might have been outdated now. So I'm assuming your plans for the paid and free nodes have also been scrapped.
Oh my goodness, man, that's old,
Old school,
old,
huh?
old,
All right.
old material. Yeah, no. So basically, let me walk you through how the node ecosystem works. Back in the beginning, and here's a little bit of ancient history for you guys. Back in the beginning, when I joined the project, I joined in I want to say March of 2020, I think. So it's been a while now, and things were very, very small, and we were just kind of working on figuring things out. Everything was still on Ethereum at that point in time. We weren't quite sure what direction we were going to go with it. And so, after that, we started having issues, with Ethereum gas fees, becoming, untenable, which led to all sorts of decisions that made perfect sense at the time, but kind of painted us into a stupid corner in a few different areas. But yeah, basically it got to the point where, as we dug deeper and deeper and deeper into this, we're like, no, look, this just isn't going to work. So what we have right now is we have a node network. There's 50,000 founders nodes out there. And those are well, there's a governance vote that's going to be coming up here before too terribly long about turning them into NFTs. But those are what support the entire ecosystem. They're the whole concept of free nodes and all of that was a thing that we were looking at, and still could potentially, in a distant future, become partially a thing. But what we found that basically creating situations where people can run a node, get a reward for that, support the network. That that requires, especially since people purchased the nodes to begin with, you want to make sure that that ecosystem is robust and sustainable, and that you don't just have a bunch of people just spinning up a bunch of random nodes that don't really do anything. So we kind of have limits on the network as a whole for the time being.
Okay, that makes sense, and I guess it changes everything, hopefully for the better. It sounds
Oh
like
yeah,
the founders node model is still intact, and the
yes,
number
it
of
is.
GALA tokens that is required, it still seems to be increasing. So, at this point in
Yeah.
time, how much does it cost to spin one up, and what are the hardware software requirements?
You can buy a node license from us right now. I want to say it's like $92,000 or something like that. Right now, the emission, uh, people have a tendency to kind of look at what a node emits and decide whether that makes sense for them. And at this point in time, a lot of people feel that it doesn't, and that's totally fine. We're okay with the network size as it is right now. Um, the system or the specific requirements, I don't have the sheet in front of me. And it's been a long time since I've had to read it. But if you can
No
run a
worries.
node
Yeah.
quite easily on an okay, like not even good, an okay, you know, desktop, not a problem at all. And if you are running it on a better computer, that works out better, and you can add more workloads to it. To handle specific things for specific games and whatnot.
And I'm assuming the layer one, it runs on a proof of stake consensus mechanism.
That's proof of delegated authority. It's not a staking based. It's not a staking based chain. The staking is great. Staking is great in terms of token lockup, if you will. Um, but at the same time, it doesn't answer a few different fundamental issues. And given the fact that we're building out this entire network, this is where the delegated authority part of things comes into play, where there are partners all around the world who run nodes. And then sort of the higher tier, if you will, not in terms of rewards or anything like that, but just in terms of this is a trusted authority running a major exchange, or a developer who's working with us, versus like any random person managing to scrape up some tokens and run a node. you know we sort of have a two-tier system in that regard, where you have trusted partners, and developers who can mint new tokens on chain, and then the rest of the nodes approve transactions and may order the transactions and whatnot without the ability to just mint their own stuff. So it's a little bit of a different model than it's somewhat more centralized than some people would like, but pragmatically speaking, it works really well for the time being.
Got it. And is there still a cap for the total number of founder nodes that can ever exist? I
Yes,
think at one point it was 50K.
50,000. Yeah, that's still
Cool.
that still is in place.
All right, great. Not all of my research is outdated. So I wanted to ask about
Mhm.
you mentioned that there's going to be a governance vote soon to turn the
Yeah,
nodes into NFTs.
yeah.
Uh,
Basically, to make it so, because right now, when we first started doing this, the nodes themselves, we maintain a essentially license service that tracks which user accounts have which nodes. And that is a solution that is more centralized than I would like. I would like it to be much much more decentralized, and the best way to do that is to make it so that if you have an NFT, that NFT is essentially your node license. And so you might have node 742, and that gives you permission to run that node in your account. and receive the rewards for running it. And if you want to, you can sell it to somebody else, and it has nothing to do with us. When they connect the node for the first time, they would have to agree to like terms of service and stuff like that. But I want it as decentralized as possible.
And given that you guys are operating your own layer one and it's live, folks that have their GALA tokens on Ethereum or BSC, what's the fastest way or the safest way, more importantly, to transfer those over?
Well, you can keep them on Ethereum. We don't actually have GALA on BSC. There was and this is a gigantic piece of drama. There was a bridge that existed, that was basically you could put your GALA in and you could get P GALA out on the other side. But that was not something that they had some issues due to some contract problems on their side. And so basically the only GALA that is we recognize as being GALA is either GALA that's on Ethereum or GALA that is on our own Geary. And you can bridge that in without a problem. But you don't even need to. You can keep your GALA on Ethereum, no problem.
Got it. And so it's not like if we have no GALA on the chain, then how do we make transactions?
Well, the way that the transaction model works is essentially at a low level. If you're just making a few transactions, it's basically free. If you're going to start making a bunch of transactions, then those transactions get progressively more expensive. But you can jump in and play, any of the games without having to make transactions, unless you are, there's certain situations where, for example, if you're playing competitively or if something needs to be tracked on chain, then transactions may have to be fired. But, if you're just playing Meow Match, for example, then it's not necessary for you to make transactions unless you would like to mint an NFT, at which point in time, that's where that first time user experience comes in to onboard people so that they can go understand exactly what blockchain is and how to work with it.
So in addition to that, I think GALA tokens are used, well, obviously we mentioned that they're used to purchase founders node licenses and GALA Games NFTs. What are some future utilities that you envision on the horizon?
Ooh, there's so much that I can't talk about until that paper drops. It's killing me. There's a lot of future uses of GALA. In addition to being able to use them, to make these purchases. One of the things that we've got coming on actually, I don't even know if this made this into the roadmap. So this might be like actual legitimate alpha for you guys. Is the fact that you will be able to stake your GALA to receive an NFT. So basically, the way that we look at this is that if you do something that we see as being a ecosystem supporting action, then we can give NFTs or give in-game access or whatever it happens to be for those actions. So there will be in the future the ability for you to stake GALA to get NFTs, where you'll lock the GALA up for a certain period of time, and you'll be given an NFT, and then you can use that, and after a certain period of time, you'll be able to unlock and whatnot, and keep the NFT. So yeah, that's one of the other additional uses. There's also going to be a larger governance piece in the further future for GALA itself, which is going to be an interesting implementation. I don't want to go into it too much because I'd rather have you guys read it rather than me just sort of say it. But yeah, there's a lot coming down the road there.
And really quick, I'm not sure if anything with respect to the tokenomics have changed, but I read that total supply is going to be somewhere around 50 billion.
Yeah,
is that
is the max cap.
25 million minted July of 2020 and through the next July of 2021, and then each July the amount that's going to be minted is cut in half?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so the original halving schedule, and this is something that is gone into in some detail in this paper that's supposed to be released. The original halving schedule was basically based off of the way that Bitcoin handles halving, right? Roughly annual halving, but because this is based on Ethereum, and at the time, it didn't do exactly what we wanted. That halving, okay, was based on a date rather than like a block height or something like that. But even bigger issue than that is the fact that that halving schedule doesn't actually make sense for something that is supposed to be used in the ecosystem. And so there is another governance vote coming up that talks about basically making the halving, rather than have it be something that is date based or annual, have it be based on basically circulating or total supply on contract. So, for example, if the total supply is over 25 billion, then emission X gets cut in half, right? And then that is what gets distributed out to the nodes that they can then claim. Now, this is important because one of the things that we've just announced is that purchases for the time being that are made, they're not actually purchases. You get whatever the thing is based on the fact that you have burnt GALA. And so as that GALA burns, the total supply will decrement down. If you get to the point where you've so much of the supply has been burnt, you could potentially even have a situation where rather than having, you have a short-term doubling until the emission catches up, and then it basically drops back down. So what you end up with is a token where high usage, okay, which contributes to founders nodes and all of that, is encouraged, and the supply emission rate is basically acts as a hedge against high volatility. So again, this is all gone into in this paper that should be out here shortly, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I would say it's very interesting, and I'm also curious to know who came up with this model.
This was me.
Wow. And when can we expect the paper?
Well, last Friday was when I wanted it to go, but there's a few things that got hung up, and so there's the thing that this paper is essentially. Let me back up. Let me back up, and we're gonna go back to like the end of last year. Okay. Um, the end of last year, I've been at this for basically 3 years straight. Okay, no days off. I took like 6 hours off when my baby was born in 2021. And then I took about a day off during the worst part of when I had COVID, and it was just like I can't even be bothered to like move off the couch. I'm just gonna lay here and not look at anything. So like total elapsed time off in the last 3 years is like, I don't know, 22 hours or something crazy like that. I actually took some time off over Christmas, and I took some time off. I didn't go into Discord. I didn't go into Slack. I didn't do anything. And I just sat and kind of thought about where we as a company were going, and where we as a community were going. And one of the things that became clear to me the more I thought about it is that there's all of this stuff that's going on that we see internally. Okay. Like I can scroll through these updates, and I can look at, the most badass, awesome new, artwork coming in for Last Expedition, the completed, fully rendered models for, all of these different things. I can see the econ changes that are coming for spider tanks. I can see the Townstar, Godot version that's going to be released here really soon. I can see all of these things. but the community can't. Okay. Now there are good reasons why some of this stuff can't be shown. So for example, we have a couple different projects that we're working on right now that have really high end IP behind them. Okay. And when you have this really high end IP, you can't just like yeet it into Twitter, right? Or just throw it into Discord, because there's lawyers involved and non-disclosure agreements and all of these different things, right? But at the same time, I felt that people needed to have access to more information than they currently had access to. And so this kind of spawned at the beginning of the year, this new direction that we want to go into as a company, where we are much more transparent about what it is that we're building and how the community of users can get involved in it. And so this is where it's like, okay, now we're going to step back. We're going to fill you guys in on exactly what's going on, exactly what has transpired up until this point in time, and what a roadmap going out into the future actually looks like. And so this document is filled with information. It's filled with new information that people haven't seen before. So I'm very excited to get it out into everybody's hands so that they can really dig in, and then we can have deeper discussions about it.
Yeah, and we'll certainly have to have you back on another time once it does release, and we can have a deep discussion about it. I'm certainly excited to dive in, and I think that not just your team, but the greater community can appreciate that you've taken such little time off. Although I'm sure your daughter appreciates the time you did take off to spend with her when she was born.
Well, she wasn't paying much attention to it. My wife, it was one of those things where it's like, we're in the hospital, my wife is asleep, the child's asleep, and I'm just sitting there. And then I'm like, okay, well, I haven't sat still in like a year and a half. So what do I do with myself? And then
Yep.
boom, back into Discord, and so yeah, it's just one of those things. Although people crack me up. Just today I went downstairs, and my daughter, she loves Play-Doh. Play-Doh is the latest thing. And the, so she came over to me with a little one of her like little toy bowls, and she you know had some wadded up Play-Doh in the bottom of it, and she gave it to me, and she's like, "Here, Daddy, Play-Doh soup." I'm like, okay, great. So I pretend to eat the Play-Doh soup, and I thought it was cute, so I took a picture of it and posted it. And then like 3 minutes after I posted it, there are a couple people on Twitter started posting pictures of their leveraged shorts, because they're like, oh, you clearly not focusing. You've clearly abandoned everything. So here, I'm shorting you. It's like, guys, what are you doing? What are you doing? People crack me up.
How dare you spend time with your daughter?
I know. How dare I? I have Play-Doh soup.
Play-Doh. I remember the Play-Doh phase. I remember the shaving cream phase too. That was a lot of fun. It's like
I remember some of
playing with
that.
putting shaving cream on a table and just like playing with it, making shapes and stuff out of it. I think your daughter would love that as well. I think kids in general love shaving cream on the table.
Ah, she usually hates things on her hands. She's kind of weird like that. She has a bean tray though that's full of beans that she likes to play with. Little dried beans. The fucking things end up everywhere.
So,
Anyway,
so yeah. So Jason, really, one more question, or rather, one more
yeah, man.
confirmation about the initial launch. I read that GALA Games received no VC funding of any kind. It was fully funded by the founders. There was no ICO. Does that make it? Does that technically make it a fair launch?
Yeah, yeah. We didn't receive any VC funding. We didn't receive any PE funding. And this is why you've never seen a article or anything that's like Gala receives X bazillion dollars of funding out of this and this valuation. Like, we just haven't done any of that. We've built stuff. That's what we do, is we build things. Um, And there are entities out there who are fantastically good at fundraising, but I've never actually seen a shipped product before, which I find interesting. But yeah, no, I would go with yeah, that this is a fair launch.
Fair enough. And what are the costs if a group of gamers, or excuse me, a group
Mhm.
of builders approaches you guys and says, we want to build within the Gala ecosystem? What are the costs? What are the
Yeah.
requirements? How does the whole process work?
Well, we're one of the things that we've got on our roadmap for this year is launching self-service environments for developers, as well as documentation and things like that. Now, there's just for a moment, think of this as like a bit of a blockchain based Steam type concept, right? Back in the day, and I'm sure you remember when like Half-Life 2 launched and Steam was like as a platform was unveiled, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, and so it's like you got Valve has made this thing called Steam. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, great. What does this even mean, right? And so for the first little while, Valve was funding and building their own games for the platform. Basically, like, we're going to make this awesome game and it's going to be on this platform. So you have to come and use this platform. Right. And over time, it got to the point where eventually they didn't have to pay to build their own games anymore. Other people wanted to come and build on it on their own. This is kind of the direction that we're going. So, some of our games are some of the first things to launch because, we've been working on them for the longest, but now, we definitely want to have other people come in and build on Jiri, build on our L1 and things like that. And so, one of the things that you will likely see in the near future is the announcement of a, bit of a formalized grant program and the ability for people to come in and start actually building. So right now, have an awesome game and get in touch with us, and we'll see what we can do. In the near future, maybe not near. People get weird about near and far and soon and things like that. But in the not too distant future, we would like to have people be able to come in and build in a completely permissionless fashion. That's
It,
our long term goal.
amazing. And yeah, you got to be careful with that word in Web3, Jason. People will take
Oh,
your
I
head
know,
off for
right? No,
that.
dude, like it's crazy. So at the end of 2021, December of 2021, we had Galaverse, right? In Las Vegas, and we announced like 6 or 7 new titles. Okay, and these are big freaking titles. Okay, this is the Walking Dead Empires with AMC. This is Last Expedition. This is like all of these freaking heavy titles. And then like 3 months later, I started getting people like rug pull, scam. It's not released yet. I'm like, do you have any idea how long it takes to build a game, guys? It's hilarious. So yeah, but in the not too distant future, let's say that.
Fair enough. Jason, earlier I mentioned a partnership with Polygon, and I also didn't mention the partnership I'd read about with Flare Network. Is that
Hmm.
information outdated, or are those still partnerships that are
No,
intact?
they're definitely we're the way that we look at this is that the future is multi-chain. Okay, and you use different chains to do different things. Ultimately, at the end of the day, okay. Um, for example, if you have an ape or a punk, right? You will never bridge that to any other chain other than Ethereum, because the idea of doing so introduces far too much risk for you to be okay with it, right? Um, but at the same time, there are different chains out there that do different things or have different abilities within them that you may be interested in, and or you have a very active community around. So this is why we're absolutely willing to work with the likes of Flare and Polygon and Aptos and any of those any of those other chains out there. We definitely do want to work with. because we believe that this ecosystem grows and everyone does better if we work together.
And what kind of work are you doing with Polygon and Flare, for example?
In most cases, it's basically giving people the ability to bridge their tokens and their NFTs out to those chains so that they can do something with it within those ecosystems. The idea is ultimately in the long run to be able to index and bridge in assets from across these chains so that we can use them for different purposes within our own ecosystem. So for example, if we just look at Ethereum, because it's what's live right now, like spider tanks, you can take your spider tank on Jiri, you can bridge that spider tank out to Ethereum, and it carries with it all of its upgrades and things like that. And you can, put it on OpenSea if you want to. Then you can buy it off. Somebody can buy it off of OpenSea and bridge it back in and use it in the game. We just see it as a way to better integrate with the entire ecosystem as a whole.
Right on. Interoperability, name in the game, love it.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask really quick about GALA Music and GALA Film. Can you give us just high-level insight into those?
I can give you very high level. The thing is, the basically when it comes to film and music, those are not parts of the ecosystem I am heavily involved in. And so I don't want to open my mouth and say something stupid and or incorrect and give people the wrong idea. And especially in film and music, when how do I put this? Especially in film and music, when you deal with in fact, when you deal with human beings, period, right? Things tend to get kind of interesting. People tend to take stuff and kind of run with it in the wrong direction at times. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that I don't inadvertently say something and create a problem for poor Bucks that she has to deal with later. So
fair enough.
like there's an interesting situation with a tweet that went out like a week and a half ago or so that was one of those things. It's the basic tweet. The basic tweet was that at GALA we're very happy to be working with The Rock and Mark Wahlberg. Right, that was the tweet basically. Now, what the tweet did not say is in a movie together or anything like that. But people took it and ran with it and they're like, oh, they're doing this thing. And the tweet didn't say that, but people really took it very much the wrong direction. So the reality is that we are doing a thing with The Rock and we're doing a thing with Mark Wahlberg. These are two separate things. And so it's actually, we're doing two different things, but people got really, really weird about that. So we deleted the tweet, and then somebody was like, oh, they deleted the tweet, it's not a thing. And it's just, again, people are funny. That's all.
The Twitter army is real, man. You gotta
be
careful with
is.
them. So I want to pass the mic to some of my community members here in just a moment, Jason. And they typically have great questions. Sure. Before I do, is there anything about GALA Games and the greater ecosystem that I didn't ask that you would like to tell us about or you're excited about?
Man, I'm really excited about everything that we've got going. I mean, to be completely frank, there have been things that I didn't necessarily like about some of the way that things were kind of done previously. I feel that we've really stepped up and we're going in a much better Web3 direction. With some of the things with burns and understanding that we have to help our community take care of and curate the ecosystem. So I'm very excited about the direction in which we're going. And I've been doing this now for like 3 years, man. And I am very, very happy with where we're going. We've come through some tough times. We've weathered what is now feeling like it's starting to thaw a bit. We've weathered a pretty pretty deep winter. Um, and we've come through, and we continue to build and continue to innovate and continue to make awesome stuff. And so I'm very happy about where we're going in the future.
Beautiful. Leave it at that. I think it's been an incredible broadcast so far. I'm going to get some community members, get questions in. Guys, if you have
Yeah, let's
questions,
do it, man.
requests, I'll bring you up. Rahmat, let's go with you first, sir.
Yeah, thank you. No, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah,
Yeah.
loud and
Okay, I
clear.
have a few questions. So I was wondering that do you have your own decentralized server for deploying the games, or you are using Amazon Web Services for this purpose?
It depends on what the specific game is and on what is happening. For development purposes, obviously we run on centralized servers because there's nothing faster than MongoDB for actually delivering game things and for development purposes. In the long run, we want to see a lot of these games run on the various node networks themselves. This is one of the things that's super important to us. And you can actually see in Last Expedition, anytime we go do a playtest of Last Expedition, that's actually running on nodes. And that's something that we're excited about. So it's one of those things that it's like there is a difference between present state and optimal future state. But that's kind of how you build stuff. Because if you could build it, um, you know, instantly the way that you wanted it built in the long run, then you wouldn't have to do all the building to get there. So
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I was thinking that games that are developed within the Gala ecosystem, will these games also going to have any interoperability so maybe players can use items and characters of the game in other games as well?
it depends on the specific title. So interoperability is really an interesting thing because it's a really big buzzword kind of in the Web3 space. People have a tendency to be like, oh yeah, we're going to build a world. It's going to be a totally interoperable metaverse, and it's going to be just like Ready Player One. It's going to be amazing. Um, and so, you go and you read the book of Ready Player One. And in the book of Ready Player One, you've got he flies around in the Millennium Falcon and the Back to the Future car, and he's hanging out with Doc Brown, and he's wearing a duster from Firefly, and you have all of these crazy IP pieces, intellectual property pieces that are all put into the book, and you can totally do that in the book. Can totally do it in the book. You can say that you're going to fly around in the Millennium Falcon in a book, and that's no problem. But the problem is and arises when you start looking at this and going, okay, now, and you can actually see this happening live. Go watch the movie of Ready Player One and compare the two. Compare the instances of intellectual property that are mentioned in the book versus the ones that are mentioned in the movie. And what you'll see is that there's like a bare handful in the movie. Whereas the book, and one of the things that made it so fun, is that it's absolutely chock full of all of these different, pop culture references that just never made it into the movie. Now, when you talk about interoperability between games, some interesting stuff happens. Okay, because let's say you're working on a game like The Walking Dead Empires, right? The Walking Dead Empires is being produced internally, but it is in partnership with AMC. Now, one of the things that AMC has is they have art approval, okay, rights in the contract, and you will not get a contract for a major IP without that major IP holder having rights to approve or deny inclusion of their assets in some random place. And they do this, for a very good reason. They do it so that it protects the IP, right? So what you don't want and what they don't want is for you to take a character, from one piece of intellectual property and shoehorn it into another piece of intellectual property where it doesn't fit. So for example, you wouldn't want to see pick a character like Woody the cowboy from Toy Story. Okay, you wouldn't want to see Woody the cowboy from Toy Story inside World of Warcraft, because that would break immersion for both games. It would be weird as hell to be in World of Warcraft and see, Woody walk up and say, watch me pull a snake out of my boot. And then if you're Woody, it just nothing fits, right? So interoperability is definitely something that we want, but ultimately it's up to the games and the game designers about whether or not they give that and what shape that is. For example, you take a game like Meow Match, which is one of the titles that recently announced the acquisition of from Ember Entertainment. You take a game like Meow Match. It's a match 3 game about cats. It is not my style of game. It is definitely somebody's style of game. We could take CryptoKitties and put CryptoKitties in there relatively easily. I mean, it's a pretty significant art lift because, of all the variations and things like that, but it could be done. You wouldn't want to take something from Jurassic Park and stick it inside Meow Match because it would be weird. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it totally makes sense. Okay, so I was thinking that are all the games developed on the Unity and Unreal Engine, and do you have any intention of maybe developing your own game engine for Gala Games in future, which can also be very helpful for the developers?
I It really depends. I hate answering all of your questions with this, but it depends on the specific game. So yes, a lot of it's Unity, a lot of it's Unreal. We're doing some stuff on Godot for Townstar. There's a few other things that are out there. Ultimately, it depends on what makes the most sense for the game, and for us, I don't know that it makes sense for us to just create our own engine. There are people who like there are people who that is the thing that they want to do and that they should do, but I don't know that it makes sense for us to pick up that lift.
Yeah, I was asking this because I have seen most big these gaming platforms having their own engine, like FIFA have their own. So regarding that, I was questioning this. So final question. So I was thinking that do you have sponsor for your games, and will you also be earning ad revenue through the Gala Games?
We definitely have earning ad revenue. It's not yeah, I guess there could be a potential for ad revenue in the future. And do we have sponsors? Like we have paid for all of them ourselves. So I guess like yes, we have sponsors, us. Um, I don't know if that answers your question though, but long story short, we've really worked hard to make it so that we can bring high quality games to the market without making it just an ad thing. Advertising, I I know that some people really want it, but I really feel that it breaks immersion. Like it would have to be done in the right way. I see that mobile platforms that could work, but other things it's a little bit harder to figure out how it would look nice in there, if that makes sense.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much for answering. Over to you, Noah.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rahmat. Next up, we got my man D Hype.
What's up, Noah? Hi, Jason. It's so cool to hear you talk about um gaming in this fashion, and especially about like it sounds like you really care about user experience,
Very
and
much so.
that's a big for me. I work with some other projects that are doing similar things to Gala Games, and I really like the projects you presented today. The MMORPG looks really cool. It's really interesting for me to see. I love seeing what other projects and what other people are doing, so that like whatever projects are going on in the future or developing now can always improve and doing. It's always about for
Yeah.
me about the user experience and something in video game land that's really amazing and fun for them. And I'm kind of curious about your opinion on like the metaverse. Like a lot of people in NFT land, I think personally, my opinion, have this like idea that everyone's going to be in the metaverse like tomorrow, right? And no one's really using it today.
Yeah.
But for me, I think video games are like the only real like practical thing that's gonna in the near future that's gonna be that
Yeah.
in whatever that experience is.
So metaverse is an interesting thing for me, and I have a tendency to people don't necessarily like my answer to this question. So if you don't, I apologize. Basically, I'm kind of a metaverse purist. Okay. If you go back and you read Snow Crash, which is, and I hate to be that guy, like, did you read the book? And I've done that twice in this Twitter Spaces. I apologize to everybody. But if you read Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, he talks about the metaverse, and there's a couple things about the metaverse that are super important. The first is that the metaverse is permissionless. Okay. You in the metaverse, you have the ability to, depending on your computing resources of your hardware, and this is described in the book, and not that it resembles reality in any way, shape, or form, but they go into some detail. But basically, depending on the resources that you want to commit to running the metaverse, you have a different experience in the metaverse. Like, for example, you could go into one place of the metaverse and it would be all stick figures because you're running it on a toaster, whereas if you go to another place, it's much more beautifully rendered and amazing looking, right? So that's the like the way that it is talked about. The next part of it is that it is infinitely extensible. Okay. So he talks about, being able to get on his, motorcycle in the metaverse and go like forever out into the blackness, into nothingness, right? And when we look at the concept of metaverse, what we see today is not so much a metaverse as it is a series of walled garden miniverses. Now, they are a necessary step. Okay. But it's not, and this is in no way, shape, or form, saying anything bad about these projects. But, you look at Decentraland, or you look at the Sandbox, or you pick a thing, right? It's a cool thing. It's a cool experience, and it's a step in the right direction, but it's not really a metaverse as it is a persistent game environment that has no quests because you just kind of show up, right? Um, and so I think that I love the concept of the metaverse. I love the idea that anyone can have a place in it. I look at the metaverse as um, like the next version of the internet. Okay, where you have your server, and your server is your little spot in the metaverse, and you can decorate it however you want, and then people could just kind of pop in to your private little area and experience via virtual reality or augmented reality, or just via a screen or whatever, can experience that space. I love that as an idea. I think, though, that, much like I was just talking about when it comes to intellectual property and things like that, people get really excited about this as a concept without actually understanding the business implications of what it actually means. Um, you know, some of these things you will never, some of this IP that's out there, you will never see it in some sort of metaverse unless it is a metaverse that has been spun up and has essentially no legal face that these entities could ever hit. If you put a Disney item in a game, they're going to find a way to dig into that. Whether it's where the server lives, whether it's the IPs connecting to it, whether it, like, all of these things are tools in a toolbox of IP enforcement. And that puts a really big kink in sort of future metaverse plans, if you will. Does that make sense? I know it's like a super wet blanket, but like.
Well, no, I think the way you laid it out is really great, because people tend to kind of like conflict all these things together. The way that you started talking about the metaverse is this large, overarching, almost like new version of the internet where everything could be maybe connected, or it's endless. But like my thoughts are like everything's gonna start from, like, I guess you use this term miniverse, like from a miniverse of, like, Disney games or Gala Games or something, or like some gaming system, right? And that's because you can actually do that. You have the IP is there, whatever. Plus, you can have actual like user interfaces that are fun, video games and things. You know what I mean? So like
Yep,
when you're
absolutely.
bringing up MMOs and stuff like that, I'm thinking like it's going to grow out of that, and it's because people actually
Agreed.
want to play video games and exist there, right?
Right, and then that's where this concept of interoperability, as the previous gentleman mentioned, is so important, right? It's about getting to the point where everybody can be on the same page and IP holders recognize, okay, wait a minute. So if I give them the right, if I give users the right to take this IP that is on an NFT, okay, that they have purchased or earned or whatever, if I let go and let them take it somewhere else so that it shows up in a context that maybe isn't ideal from a brand perspective, but is in fact advertising in its own way, that works out better for us. Once they get to the point where they recognize that, then there can be some sort of like, you could almost look at it as like fair use standards. Okay, so it's like fair use, and you're a song is playing in the background when you shoot a video of your kid at their birthday party, right? That's like, I wasn't trying to use the song, it just happened to be in the background when we were doing this other thing. So maybe there's a fair use argument that can be made there. Once you get to that point where everybody's willing to accept that sort of thing, I think that we're actually making progress. We're just not there yet.
I think that brings up a really interesting point too, because if you think about the world we're in right now, like in this Twitter space, a lot of people here might not be NFT connoisseurs, but a lot of are. And
Mhm.
in the NFT space, like your own NFT that you purchase is often you have IP licensing to use that for whatever, right? So there is possibility that there could be, this version of a metaverse where it like kind of motivates companies or projects to be in that format where like, okay, if you're, purchase this NFT from my project or this brand and you can use it in the metaverse and stuff like that. So I think there are ways, but we're probably far off from like actually
Yeah.
having any of this in place. But like Web3, I think is why we're so excited about it, because we see all this, you know,
Yep.
versions of it where
Well,
we have our own IPs of things, and we're part of communities, and we're on Twitter Spaces, which is not necessarily a metaverse, but it's this in between thing where we're kind of
right.
existing together, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
I
love
think
it,
it's
man.
really interesting because I hear all the time in these spaces people saying we're building a metaverse for our project, or we're building this or that, and I'm thinking like, well, who's going to
No,
actually hang out there and actually be there? Like no one's
you're
doing it
you're not
now.
you're
Like
not building a metaverse. You're building an environment for your project. Congratulations. That's great. Nothing wrong with it. You can't just say it is a game that is semi-persistent, therefore metaverse. That's that's me and my nitpicky definitions, though. I apologize again.
And we have to realize there's this balance between actual efficiency and creativity. Just because you build some kind of 3D VR thing doesn't mean anyone will use it. I own a VR headset. When I bought it, I started using it right away because I thought it was fun. But then I realized, like, I much prefer being in Twitter spaces, talking to my friends,
Yep.
and playing video games that are much more developed, and much
Yep.
fun.
Exactly.
So I think these are just things that people that are developing games and projects just need to keep in mind, that like talking to people like yourself and shows like this, like Noah, and the communities are great ways for us to get feedback and to realize what people actually want. The MMO game that you brought up earlier, I looked at it. It has cool graphics. You have different, ways and
Cool,
thoughts
right?
on it. I don't know
I
how
love it.
involved you are in like these actual individual games, but I thought it was really cool that there was like no quest system and it's open, just new concepts and ideas of
Yeah,
games.
yeah. I mean, I'm peripherally involved in lots of things, but I am not a game designer myself. So if I have a really what I think to be a good idea, I attempt to present it as I have an idea of questionable value. Maybe you want to do something with it. I don't know. If you don't, that's fine. Um, so with McCarthy and I sit down and talk a lot about stuff though. So there's a little bit of feedback in there.
Thank you so much, Jason. Those are just some of the questions I had. I have to go on some business calls now, but it was great to meet you and Noah. And thanks for having this great space today.
And you as well, man. Pleasure.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
thanks a
you
lot.
so much, D-Hype. Always fantastic questions and comments. Appreciate the value you add. Captain Levi, speaking of great questions, you're up next, sir. And then Daniel, I'll get to you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. Hi, Jason.
Hey,
I,
man.
I
How you
really,
doing?
I'm good, I'm good. You've done a really wonderful presentation. I just have two questions. The first one I wanted asking is about live streaming services. I have
Mhm.
checked around and I have not seen if you support live streaming services. Do you have any plans to support this in the future?
You mean in terms of within the games themselves, or so that you can, stream Twitch, or in what sense?
Yeah, whichever is remotely possible. I think both will actually be preferable and both advantageous to both you guys and the gamers themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely work with a number of streamers, and we are happy to, support and send traffic and things like that. I mean, we want to ultimately, at the end of the day, we want people to play games, and we want people to be seen playing those games, so that other people want to play those games. I mean, that's how this works out for everybody, right? So yeah, that's definitely a thing that I think that you'll probably see more of in the future from us.
That sounds good. Because I actually feel it's going to, bring more revenue. The next question I actually have, I'd like
Hmm.
a personal thought on it, and I can stand. I also stand corrected in this case. I would like to talk about, the projects, the funding charity you're actually doing for, going green. I
Hmm.
understand
Hmm.
that you've planted about 307 trees and counting. Considering the fact
I
that
think
you
it's significantly more than that. That's probably an old update, but yeah,
okay,
continue.
okay, well, okay. So, based on this data that I am seeing here, means you've
Hmm.
actually spent about 300 and over $300,000, planting trees. And in
Yes.
fact, I actually want to appreciate the fact that you're not just carbon neutral, but rather you're actually carbon negative.
Yep.
Not very many projects actually talk about this. But if I were to, I actually was thinking about it and then I scaled it up a little bit. Um, wouldn't it be better for the environment if you actually, bought land that actually already has trees with, this money and rather than letting them cut down the trees and then protecting them because if I were going pound for the weights that the new trees will be pulling and the weights that the old trees already have, I think it's more efficient to get the land where there's actually already old trees that have not been cut down and declare some kind of protection against activity on that land, logging activity on that land, rather than waiting for the young trees to actually grow to become the big trees. What do you think?
Well, we actually have. So the reason that we use this number, and the reason that we work with One Tree Planted, is it's a very easy thing for people to understand. But we have purchased land in a few different places, for specifically for the purposes of rewilding. Basically, taking exhausted farmland and areas that would otherwise be logged, and preserving them instead of allowing them to continue to be misused. So the way that I look at this, and how do I put this? I'm in this space, and the only reason I'm in this space is because I believe it is where I can have an impact. And I believe that whether you're looking at this from the perspective of environmental stewardship, and when I say environmental stewardship, um, I mean this in a very specific way. It's like when I used to go out on hikes and hunting with my grandfather and things like that. It's like, it is our job as people, as humans, to take care of the place that we live, right? To not make a mess of things. Um, I think that's a very important concept. And so it's easy though for people to understand okay, here's a tree. If I buy an NFT, then a tree is planted. People get that. It makes perfect sense. And so, one tree, okay, basically, is the equivalent of, at its absolute worst pre-proof of stake, absolute high gas, proof of work Ethereum, one tree would basically counteract 5 NFT, total lifetime gas usages, if you will. And so, it's one NFT, one tree is very easy for people to understand. So that's why we use that. But that's not the only thing that we do. We just don't talk about a lot of the rest of it.
That's actually a great answer, Jason. I was actually just thinking about it and I felt it to actually make more sense. But with the way you put it, it actually even does make even more sense. My last question will actually be regarding the app stores. In the beginning of the AMA, I think you and Noah actually discussed app stores, and you said that currently app stores, especially mobile app stores, even if they have some kind of flexibility, low level flexibility with Web3 related games, they still have some restrictions put in place. And you guys actually have great content. I actually even see that the games are actually ranked from like Call of Duty merchandise. I can see some color coded green and color coded purple. Have you thought about opening a dedicated app store? I know you have a bias towards PC games. But how about we mobile gamers, especially those that have dedicated gaming phones? It would actually be cool if we had an app that we could access and that we could play these games through. So have you thought of opening your own mobile app store?
So it depends on it basically depends on exactly how such a thing would be used. Okay. For example, we will almost for sure have an app that is the equivalent of the GALA platform. Okay, so you would be able to access some things there, and if you had a game that was a browser-based game, then yes, absolutely, you could probably access it from there. However, high quality games, usually require a significant download of some sort. Now, this creates problems when you start looking at it from the perspective of basically how do we get these into the hands of users. Now, for Android, it is comparatively easy because you can just basically sideload it. So we could create an app store that essentially just gives you the ability to sideload whatever app is that you want on Ethereum or not on Ethereum, on Android, and then you just kind of like play it that way. But that would be a really suboptimal and clunky experience, and obviously wouldn't work at all for Apple unless there is a court case in the EU, if I remember correctly, that is basically about whether or not they'll allow people to sideload stuff on Apple products. And if that goes through, then maybe that changes. But ultimately, what we want is we want to work with the various app stores and with these organizations, rather than going against them necessarily. So I don't think it would be a thing that we would do in the short term or medium term, and long term is I'm kind of doubtful of its ultimate usefulness.
Yeah, I wouldn't want, if it doesn't really bring revenue, it's actually useless to bring it. But I'm
Yeah,
also
I
actually
mean,
closely.
sorry, go
Yeah, I'm
ahead.
hearing you. Yeah, I'm actually also closely following the Apple case. I really hope that things go well, as it is in Android. It's actually Gala Games is actually something else. Which I can see the wonderful future you guys have ahead of you. I'm wishing you guys the very best. I really want to
Thank
appreciate
you.
your honest and detailed answers to my questions. I'm wishing you guys the best, and I hope that the Gala Games project moves bullish moonward. Over to you now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Levi. And I think we have one more set of questions from Daniel Mora in the audience.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Daniel.
Absolutely, Daniel.
It's okay to move on. My mic's acting weird.
Daniel, we could hear you, and now we can't. So I don't know what changed, but if you could try to put your mouth a little bit closer to your mic.
Oh yeah, can you give me like 5 seconds to fix it?
Yeah, sure, no problem. It's been a great broadcast so far, everyone. If you've enjoyed what's being talked about, definitely give Jason a follow, give Gala Games a follow. And if you like the content that we're putting out here at Whalecoin Talk, I'd appreciate a follow on the Aquarium, Whalecoin Talk, and Noah. It really helps us grow and helps you guys know when we're putting out good broadcasts.
Hey guys, I'm back.
And well, there we go. That's much better.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I had 2 questions. Without revealing anything, you don't really have to reveal anything. They're just kind of general ideas, picking your brain. I was wondering when it comes to Gala music and Gala film, do you think it would be an app, a streaming app would be a good addition for those?
I think that yeah, I can hear you. Your sound got really weird there after like 2 seconds, but I got the question, which was basically, as I heard it, would a streaming type app be a good complement to what's going on with Gala Film and Gala Music? Right now, you can actually stream content on the Gala Music site. There's actually the beta platform there. I imagine that ultimately, as we've said, that there's some changes that are taking place in sort of the app store land and landscape. I think that that's definitely something that will probably eventually happen.
Okay, and I'm sorry. So one, hello. One,
There we go. That's perfect. Now you sound great. Oh, never mind.
well, can you still hear me? I'll just have to say it like this.
Go for it.
You touched on the casual gamers being in mobile and the hardcore gamers being in PC. I'm wondering about the general gamers. I'm not in the echo chamber when it comes to gaming, so this is just from the outside looking in. It seems like a lot of general gamers are on consoles. Whether it's sooner or later, would you like to see Gala Games infiltrate a console, whether it's just any console?
Yeah, of course, man. Absolutely. I mean, the main thing for us is we want to have awesome experiences for people, right? Like if we can't create a great experience, then it's not a thing that we want to do. Consoles do create a good experience for gamers, and I think that that's definitely something that we would like to investigate in the future. I think that what's happening, and one of the other interesting components of like mobile gaming is there is a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for, maybe a convergence is a good way to put it in terms of gaming tech. So I think that console gaming and PC gaming, as more and more PC gamers start to use things like controllers and more console gamers become more and more mobile, you see things like the Switch, which yes, it's kind of like this weird hybrid between the two. I think you're going to see a convergence in terms of tech, and I think you're going to see a lot of the dividing line between PC and mobile gamers and console gamers kind of disappear. It's going to at least fade. Like I remember when I was a kid, the difference was stark. Like you were a PC person or you were a console person. And if you were a PC person, you thought that everybody who had a console was a console peasant. And if you were a console person, you thought everybody who used a PC was a uncoordinated idiot because they couldn't handle a controller. I think that the differences here are beginning to fade, and that line is blurring significantly.
Well, thank you for taking my questions.
My pleasure, man.
Thank you.
Jason, we're a little bit under 2 hours, and that's been an incredible broadcast. I think the community has really got a lot of value out of what we've talked about on here. I'm very excited for you to put that paper out and to hear more about what Gala Games is in store. But seems just from the content you've shared with us so far over the last hour and 45 minutes that there's already quite a bit to check out. There's already quite a bit happening. I'm excited specifically for the
so
MMO.
much, man.
If you have any closing thoughts or final words for our audience before you head out, go ahead and share them with us now.
I would definitely invite you guys all to come and join our Discord at galagames.chat. We're a little bit of a different Discord. We don't do like the whole price speculation thing. So if you're, looking for like Moon Lambo conversations, this is not the place. But if you want to talk about games and you want to talk about blockchain in games and playing blockchain games, then definitely join our Discord. We would love to have you. And if you join GALA Gold, which I think is like $50 lifetime membership or something like that right now, then you have the ability to hang out in the GALA Gold chat, which is where a lot of the executives of the project hang out, a lot of the time. So I drop in there at least a few times a day, take questions, talk about random things. It's a great community, and I welcome you guys all.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jason Brink, aka Barbarian Path of the Berserker. My name is Noah. I haven't come up with a cool name or cool title for myself yet, but I will soon enough. You are listening to The Aquarium, brought to you by Whale Coin Talk. Remember that everything you hear on these broadcasts is meant for educational purposes only. Nothing is to be considered as financial advice. So